how to stay resilient when times are tough. Hi, I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. This is the first day from the Fundraising School, and I'm delighted to welcome back Kay Sprinkle Grace. Kay is the founder and principal of Transforming Philanthropy. She is much sought after in the United States and around the world for her fundraising and leadership consulting. She has authored 3 books, won numerous awards from AFP and other organizations, and has a long history with the Fundraising School, one of the first faculty hired by our founder back in the day, Henry Rosso. And Kay, what a delight to have you back with us on the Fundraising Schools podcast.
It's a joy to be here, Bill. Thank you so much.
And of course, you have been leading for an extensive amount of time in our sector with a lot of success as a fundraiser, as a consultant, also in the area of leadership. And as we record this interview in 2025, blood pressure is going up. People are getting nervous. The economy seems to be growing with uncertainty. World events continue to cascade from one day to the next. As you teach leadership around the world, what advice do you have for fundraisers when difficulties arise like many folks are seeing today?
It has to do with the importance of our sector, because I feel that our sector is so important, particularly at times like this, when people are looking for the things in their lives that can be strong and persistent and overcome, that if we as professionals are not strong and persistent, then we are letting down our communities. And we can't just say, oh, it's so overwhelming and everything. And yet it's very tempting to. And certainly the blood pressure issue is something. But I find that it is both a gift and a detraction to be in the nonprofit sector during times of crisis, because the gift that you have is that you can make people feel better. But of course, the challenge that we have is that we feel that very, very acutely, because we see giving dropping off and we see that people are very anxious. So that's why I think it's so important, and why we really focus on resilience and on renewal, particularly in our leadership development programs.
Hey, the gift, if I'm understanding you correctly, is the philanthropic sector is uniquely capable of making the world a better place, regardless of the machinations of the private sector or decisions that are made or not made in the public sector. We can be that steadying presence in people's lives, our donors and our program participants. The downside is when things happen in those other sectors with the economy and public policy, totally out of our control, can have a negative effect on our work.
So what are the strategies? I was thinking on this just last week in preparation for this, and someone had said, well, I just think we, as the nonprofit sector, we need to diversify. And I countered that. It was a public forum, and I countered it, and I said, I think we need to solidify. I think that one of the things, not only our own persona and think about who we are and what makes us tick, but I think we also need to partner more actively with organizations doing similar things so that we are able to truly make the difference. And right after, we've left out the weather, Bill, we've left out that kind of thing. So back right after Katrina, that devastating earthquake, here I am in California with earthquakes, the devastating hurricane in New Orleans, there were at that time 7 organizations in New Orleans dealing with the AIDS epidemic. 7. And they were mostly wiped out in terms of their facilities. So they all came together in this space that had survived, and the leader of No AIDS, as in New Orleans AIDS, pulled everybody together and said, we've lost 1/3 of our population, but not 1/3 of our AIDS population. We are going to have to really get together with those of you who are feeding people with AIDS, who are providing counseling services, all the things that we're doing. And can we come together as one organization and really make a difference? And they did. And that kind of unity helped the leaders of each of those organizations really rally around the strength of making a difference. Because I believe that part of our resilience comes from knowing that we make a difference. And when we feel that, when we see that, when we hear that, we are really struck by the fact that what we're doing matters. And that to me is the most important thing. I live by a little saying that actually is from the Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who is very well known. Our goal should be to live life in radical amazement. Get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. And I think that what we do in our sector is amazing. In my leadership work in Central and Eastern Europe, working with people who were funded by our government through USAID to start the community foundation movement in Bosnia-Herzegovina. What a difference she was making. Just that impact she had in villages. And the people I worked with there who ran children's services organizations, they had that joy of knowing that they were truly making a difference in lives. And I think that is the key to resilience. My other mantra is the last line of an E.E. Cummings poem that simply says, I'd rather learn from one bird how to sing than teach 10,000 stars how not to dance.
Do what is possible. Find where there is potential and ability. And part of that radical amazement, Kay, could be, if I'm understanding you correctly, somewhat of a paradox that when things are difficult, certainly, donors want stability, and this might affect our fundraising. A down economy might affect our fundraising and so forth. But that the special uniqueness of the nonprofit sector can shine even more during these difficult times. And we can lean into our longstanding fundraising case for support and talking about our impact and our results. And they might even shine a little more brightly when times are dark.
I think that they really do, because I think what we can do, and if there's a trick, this is my trick, is that I move from feeling scarcity to feeling abundance. And it's just such a simple move. We too often fundraise in times of dire impact, like we're going through right now, from a standpoint of what we don't have. And so that's why you should give to us, is because we don't have that. Instead of saying, look at us, look what we are doing, look how we are affecting our community, how we are providing these services, we're doing everything we can to have impact. And we come from a place of abundance, because philanthropy, as you well know, Bill, it comes from abundance and it creates abundance. Philanthropy has these fabulous, dual roles. The other thing is that we must remember that people have two portfolios. They have a financial investment portfolio and a social investment portfolio. They take from one to enrich the other. And right now, with our financial investment portfolios being pretty fragile and wobbly, what is, I think, delightful is that if we, as nonprofit organizations and as nonprofit leaders who want to buoy our own feeling of impact, if we increase the messages to our donors at a time when they want to know that at least one portfolio is performing well, and just to do like the little surprise email that says, was thinking of you the other day and your investment in our youth leadership program. Just wanted to share with you that one of our students has just been elected to her student council in her high school. She's come a long way thanks to you. I got a note like that during the recession. I'd given $150 to Boys and Girls Clubs. But at that moment, I felt like, wow, they really remembered. So it's the two portfolios, the social investment and the financial investment, but it's also abundance versus scarcity. And I just think it's so important that personally we find the places for abundance in our lives, and the places where I think that sometimes we stay in jobs that we shouldn't stay in. And we spiral down, and then we're no good to anybody, not to ourselves, not to any. You have to have courage, and you cannot live a contradiction, because you and I know, because we were greatly inspired by the founders of the fundraising school and the and the School of Philanthropy, is that, in fact, all philanthropy is about values. And if we don't live our values, then how can we possibly reinforce the need to live your values to others? And what times of challenge present is a dissonance, because we see that our values are being challenged and in some cases ruptured. And so if we're also not living our values ourselves, then it makes it even doubly difficult.
Okay, you've counseled fundraisers for such a long time around the world, and so much of this applies to organizational resilience and fundraising strategy resilience. Can you provide your advice for individual fundraisers? And, sometimes the phrase is self-care or life-work balance. And, again, as people see the news every day and they care so deeply about the wonderful programs and impact and results of their nonprofits, but personally, they may be feeling so much weight as they're doing this work to build resources for the wonderful work of the nonprofit organization. What advice do you have for that individual, for that person in that fundraising role?
I think there's two things, Bill, and one is seek others. In other words, we are a marvelous profession. We attract people who care deeply, who really want to make a difference. And when we get overwhelmed, we tend not to reach out. I'm just going to sit at my desk and I'm just going to do my work because, But if we are able to reach out, I've connected with several fellow professionals that I have not connected with in a while during this time that we're going through right now. The other thing is seek professional coaching or counsel. Don't be afraid or ashamed or think it's a sign of weakness, because asking for help is a sign of strength. It says that you know who you are and you know what you need, and you're going to ask for it. And I have had, requests for coaching from people who are very established, but they're just like, right now, they have to inspire others. And when we have that mandate to inspire others, we sometimes need a little extra inspiration ourselves. And also, I think it's helpful if we speak up and speak out, but remember always to do it in a way that's helpful. And anger, I think, it's the enemy of resilience, because it leads to a breach in relationships and challenge to your values. If things are very bad in an organization, fix it or leave. All of this ultimately is about how well we continue to strengthen our sector while at the same time not losing ourselves. And so to me, resilience is renewal, which is stability plus change. It's an old concept from John W. Gardner, with a touchstone of purpose and no fear of emotion. I had an interesting conversation with a young man from Romania that I mentored for a year after the Leaders of Tomorrow program. And he is now getting a master's in nonprofit management at the University of Oregon. And we got together yesterday by phone. And I said, so what's your overview of this program? He said, where's the emotion? He said, you Americans are so pragmatic. All of the courses and the classes and the presentations are all just kind of cut and dried, and this is what you do, and this is how you do it, and et cetera. And he said, what I want to feel is the joy and the emotion. And that's another thing. If we cap joy because we can't be joyful because we're so worried, then we are unable to really stimulate joy in anyone else over the impact of their investment, over the importance of their volunteer work, over the fact that they just showed up. And, showing up is a lot of this, Bill. It's just every day we just have to keep showing up.
And not to minimize what's happening now, but we've endured in the past, all of the civil strife of the 60s, the economy upside down in the 70s. We think about 9/11, think about, different wars and natural disasters like you've mentioned that have happened. And the nonprofit sector has been able to persist. It's not easy, but we need those resilient fundraisers and nonprofit leaders, Kay, to be able to help us again deal with the current season of challenge.
And I think we have to remember, Bill, and you know this so well because you are a model. We are models for others because many of the people who volunteer for us, who give to us, they're looking for a security that we represent, that this issue in which they are investing, because I always remember that people give not to the institution, perhaps their university, but it's about the issue, which is why people cluster around issues. You can go to the opera program and then to the symphony and then to the ballet, and it's the same people, and likewise, if it's a homeless issue, an unhoused issue, food insecurity, you're going to see the same people. So it's issues. And they look to us to be a model for solving that problem. And I'm quite an admirer of Seth Godin, who is the marketing guru. And he reminds us that we exist to solve problems, which is why we need to come together to try to solve this problem and not to compete with each other. I worry that our sector gets into a very competitive mode, particularly in times of abundance, of wealth, because we're all out there going for the money. When in fact, and I'm such a devotee of the fundraising school and was raised at Hank Rosso's knee practically, and it is that mission isn't what you do, it's why you do it. And if organizations would gather around their why, then we would be solving so many more problems than we solve now. Do we serve problems or do we solve them? And that's a big question.
And if we're solving them and the problems are bigger, we are more needed than ever before. Exactly. Wisdom born of expertise and experience from Kay Sprinkle Grace. Kay, thank you so much for all the work you do through transforming philanthropy in the United States and around the world, and for sharing that with us once again here on the Fundraising Schools podcast.
Thank you so much.
I would encourage each and every one of you to pursue the certificate in fundraising leadership for no other reason than it was Kay's idea. She recommended it to us, and we did it. And we now have several dozen folks with that certificate, many more still working on that with our Effective Leadership Successful Fundraising course, the course on the art of fundraising, and others that lead to that certificate. One of 5 that we offer through 27 public courses in person in 10 U.S. cities, online, anywhere around the world. We have custom training that we can bring directly to you. We also have our quarterly webinars and these weekly podcasts and our wisdom gathered in our textbook, Achieving Excellence in Fundraising, the book now out in its 5th edition. Find all of this online at go.iu.edu/TFRS for the Fundraising School. Grateful for our producers today, the Emmy Award winner, Mike Anthony, my colleague, Jennifer Boffman, CFRM. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz. You are now more fully informed on this first day from the Fundraising School.